What was the most challenging job that you did with your helical piles? And what was the funnest job that you did? And maybe even what's the biggest?
Helical piles were created on the East Coast in America by a blind Irish engineer working with the Army Corps of Engineers in the 1830s. He created these things. The Army Corps of Engineers met this Irish guy and he put them in, and some of those lighthouses are still in use today because he built these things so well.
Wow.
Every single building that is built in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area has helical piles underneath it. Very large corporation. My old boss, Don, was a genius. He could create anything. He gave me a drawing, he said, here, build this. And we did. And it was a blast to build. It was one of the neatest experiences of my life, and I get to drive by it every day and look at it and holy crap, I built that bridge.
All right, Aaron, so here we are after all of the tried attempts. We're trying to make this happen. Can you please introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what you do?
Certainly. I'm Aaron Clark, owner-operator of Open Concept Construction, small contractor here in Minnesota, and I do mostly residential remodels, a lot of decks, a lot of additions, and your neighbor. So,
Exactly.
So we became pals whether we liked it or not.
I wanted to say, and the best part.
Yeah, and the best part. Yeah, exactly. So
every time you say Aaron Clark, I always just say, AKA Superman.
Yeah. Well, at least you stopped calling me Aaron.
I don't know if
That's the very first conversation we ever had, man.
We did. You're like, no, man, I can't be Aaron. It's just one A in my name. I was like, no. That does not.
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable to me. You're still Aaron. But it was just for fun.
Yeah.
It wasn't malicious, but we always get a laugh out of that, and we have for years. Mm-hmm. But
my company? Yes. Okay, my company is located in Mounds View, Minnesota. I started in construction in 2001. I started in commercial construction. I did that for 12 years. Metal studs, concrete formwork. I used to say that I was well-rounded in the fact that I could do the concrete formwork at the beginning of the job and I could do the trim work at the end of the job. I can do anything in between. I literally have done everything on a construction site. Run cranes, massive equipment, and everything. There are very few things that I have not done in construction. So my go-to is I can build anything. It just takes money. That's one of my go-to sayings.
Time and money?
No, screw time. It just takes money. Money and time are the same thing, right? No, I love to make calluses and sawdust. It's my favorite thing. I love to strap my bags on and work for a day. That's where a lot of small business owners and me differ. I like being the guy on the job. I love it. I love the feeling of getting home and taking off my shirt and having sawdust go everywhere. And my wife's not so big a fan, but my kids love it because you smell like sawdust, Daddy. Yeah. It's the best thing in the world.
It's one of those things as a business owner to a certain degree and to a certain point, which me and you talked about so many different times, where that's the part where the love of playing that role and doing that so well and the part of running the business constantly clash.
Yeah, that's why my business isn't bigger, because I can't stop putting my bags on, which you've informed me that I need to do.
It's and I don't ever want to say that to anybody that that's one of those things that you got to say goodbye to. Yeah, it's just like with more people, with bigger size and with growth, it's just unfortunate. There's one of those things that has to take the step back and kind of like, hey, there's just not enough time. You're not able to do that, and you don't have at that point in time you don't have anybody that is able to replace you in that. Right. That's going to be able to play that role better than you are. Mm-hmm. And most of your contacts and people that and people that refer you, and it's all based upon your name. Yeah. Most of my clients didn't even know the name of my company, and he's like, who do I write the check to? And it's like, well, you've been sending me business all this time. You don't remember SMC?
Right, exactly.
So that's the thing. It's like, oh, Aaron will do it for you. Well, what does Aaron do?
Who's Aaron? Why is Aaron?
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit? I know that you do a lot of work, and I know that you are pretty much very versed in everything that you do, but there is something that you specialize in, and there's something that you do very well, and we hire you on every occasion and every chance we get for, which is the piles.
Yeah. So years ago, I got into installing helical piles. I saw them done on a commercial job one time where we were doing underpinning. And so basically a corner of a building was falling apart. We cut holes in the concrete wall, dug out the dirt from the inside, and this guy came and he put screws in sideways like this and pulled the whole building back together. And I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I'd never heard of anything like it. At that point, I didn't know what a helical pile was. When I heard pile driving, I thought of like when they're doing bridges and they pound the massive piles in.
First time when you said to me piles, I was like, hold on. All I see is that big old, weight, boom,
pounding piles into the ground. Whether it be in water situations where they're putting in massive docks or something like that. Like Minnetonka, they have huge piles driven all over the place for the massive docks that never come out. I was on a job doing a kitchen remodel for one of my best friends, and he had bought a really cool piece of land, and it's 8 acres in the middle on a lake. He had lake view, but no lake access. So he said, I met this guy, and he's gonna come and possibly put in a permanent dock for me. And I was like, how's he going to do that? I've done a lot of construction. I had no idea what it was. Turns out the guy's a helical pile installer, and they've got a lot of different names: helical piles, screw piles, whatever. It's all the same thing. It's a micro pile system that basically you're taking a big screw, putting it in the ground, and building on top of it. So you screw down into the ground to find proper soils that'll hold on to whatever it is that you're putting on top.
It's for other people that maybe are not aware of it. It's a definitely a replacement to a footing.
Yes. So a concrete footing, like you would put underneath a deck,
right.
Which we do here in Minnesota.
Yes.
A concrete footing, you dig a massive hole in the ground, 16, 24 inches in diameter, whatever it is. You have to dig 42 to 60 inches deep, depending on what you're putting on top of it. And then you have your inspector come out and he checks the hole, make sure it's deep enough. And then you pour concrete and then you wait 48 hours and then you can build on top of it. Or you call a guy like me and for almost the same price, I come in, put a screw in the ground and you build on it immediately. There's no waiting, no muss, no fuss.
Yep.
I can tell you exactly how strong that pile is gonna be by how much force I put onto the pile as I'm putting it in, actually. There's a digital readout that I get as I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So
I love that part. That was what kind of intrigued me about it when we did it and you showed me that. I was like, wow, this is interesting. This is like, I dig a hole, I pour my concrete, and I hope to God that that's it.
Right,
like
exactly.
With the traditional footing, because you have no way of measuring it. You know what I mean? Other than putting the structure on it and hope it doesn't sink.
Right, and that's actually something that I get called for occasionally. Sometimes you'll call me for it. Hey, we have concrete footings that failed. I need piles, so I'll come in, pull the concrete footings out, put in a helical pile, and there has never been a situation where a helical pile can't be used. So you can put them in, unless it's really rocky, like the North Shore of Minnesota, where there's massive slabs of granite. I can't screw through those.
Right.
There are other systems that you can do that with. Mine isn't one of them.
I see.
So micropiles are for soils that are not suitable for concrete. Here in Blaine, everything is built on a swamp. And if you put in a concrete pile or a concrete footing, a lot of times it'll fail. It'll push up in the winter. We have really deep freeze. Or it'll drop down. Or in awesome cases, you'll have 4 footings and these 2 will go up and these 2 will go down, and it ruins anything that's sitting on top of it.
Yep. I have experienced it on more than one occasion, especially in the areas where we are building a deck and we have the footings and everything else, and we dig out the footing, and then the next day I come for an inspection and my footing is full of water.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh my God, I completely forgot about the water table, and we are either close to a lake, a swamp, or whatever, that it never even made me think about that water would make its way into my footing, and of course pump and get everything out of it.
Dig another hole next to that one, dig a hole between them, put a sump pump down there, and it has to go for a couple of days to dry out your hole enough so you can pour concrete in.
Yeah, and the delays that was bringing into the, I already scheduled the jobs, I already scheduled the materials, I already did all of that. On top of that, I have dirt that now I just dug out even more. I'm destroying people's yards. They're not happy about it. They want that deck, but they're not happy about that I'm going to kill 50% of that grass around there with all the dirt that's sitting on there. And then now when I got to get that out after I pour my footings and everything else. And that was the part that I really hated, and that it's like, it almost was like the cost of you getting this deck is I'm going to destroy all this, beautiful grass and landscape.
Well, not only that, but think about the costs that are going to you now. You're paying a guy to go and dig another hole, and you're paying to get a pump that's going to run on the electricity of the house. Sure, it's not that much, but if it runs constantly for 4 days, that's a cost.
That's a cost, yeah.
And the dirt
it adds up. It adds up to so many different levels. But I think after like the first job that I've done, and I've done it, I believe one of your competition who should remain not nameless, and I did not know you at that time.
That's fine.
My apologies for that.
Hey, damage is done.
Yeah, damage is done. Yes. I had a big job for a client in White Bear Lake whose house was facing a lake and had a nice little backyard that was built on with traditional footings and everything else, but everything started failing, you know. I mean, the house did get built maybe in mid-90s, and whoever built the footings and everything else at that time, I don't think they paid close attention or any attention of kind of what's, you know, there. It held enough for however many years. But now I'm like, okay, you know, they brought on now screened-in porch. They brought on a lot more to it. And I felt so bad to tell this client, like, you know, I don't know how I might be able to fix this, you know, and if I dig another footing, I mean, I cannot guarantee that footing, you know. So, you know, did my little bit of research and look into that, and I get this guy, and they come out there and they do this, and I was just like, you got my attention.
Exactly,
you know?
right?
And then I met you, and you're like, that's what I do. I'm like, no way. I'm like, all right, everything I get, you're doing it, you know? So it's like...
It's one of those situations where it makes the impossible possible in a very short period of time.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And at the same time, like, you know, another job that you really helped me out on is in the middle of dead winter, I believe, God, I think it was even December, you know, I'm like, there's no footing I can dig, first of all, because the ground is frozen and it's going to take me forever. And that's going to be just an expense that's not even necessary to even attempt at that time. But I have this porch, 2-story porch that I got to build and put it back together and get the client, you know, give him his home back. And you come in with that bad boy and you just screw right through. Like, I think we had a little bit of difficulty hitting a few things, but we worked through that. And
that is the deepest pile that I've ever installed.
Really?
So in helical piles,
I think, was it like the 2 first ones were perfect, but the third one was the deepest?
The third one. So Minneapolis is a really special place in that the soil is garbage underneath everything. In Minneapolis, we have high silt content in the soil, not a lot of sand, gravel, and all of these different types of soils. And because Minneapolis was a river valley, Minneapolis and St. Paul both, there's a lot of silt deposits. And silt is just nothing. It's garbage soil. It's thinner than sand, so it can't hold weight. So there were three piles in a row. The outside one, a 7-foot lead. So that's the first piece of screw that has a big blade on the bottom of it. That one went down, perfect, no problem, hit the number. This one went down, no problem, hit the number. I went to do that middle one, and I went down, I put a 7-foot extension on it, less. Another 7-foot extension, less. That one is down 28 feet.
Wow.
28 feet. I've heard of piles going down hundreds of feet. Every single building that is built in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area has helical piles underneath it. Very large corporation. There isn't one building in all of Minneapolis-St. Paul that's been built in the last 10 years that doesn't. Really? If it's over 5 stories, it has helical piles. Every single one.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, so like my wife works downtown Minneapolis, and I would walk around these huge sites where they're digging. The basement of this building is 30 feet underground, and I look down in the hole, and sure as I am breathing, sure as anything, there's a pile of helical piles at the bottom, and there's a guy down there in a Mini X like mine that got dropped down there with a crane, and he's putting screws in the ground. Wow. So that's how they get their numbers on those massive buildings.
That is insane.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I did not know
that was the original reason I got into piles, so I could do commercial jobs. So like massive buildings with tip-up walls, concrete walls, the keyway that they put in, they can't get their strength in a lot of places. So they'll come in and put a helical pile every 4 feet around that entire thing, pour the keyway on top of that, and you set your concrete on top of that, no problem.
Wow, that is amazing. So, I mean, it's a lot more versatile than, you know, I gave it credit for, but I didn't know much about it. All I know is like, hey, for what I use, this is what I need, you know, and these are my problems and solutions.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, so it's like, I did not know that. So when you got into, obviously, how you got into Helical and doing that, is that a good portion of your business? What is that roughly?
Right now, it's probably about a quarter of my business. Okay. I install them for myself when I'm building decks or additions onto homes. I'll install them for myself, but it's tending towards a lot of other construction companies want them done, but they want a little bit higher end piles. So there are companies that are out there that put in what we call pop can screws. So the outside of the wall of the pile is really, really thin wall. It can hold a lot of force straight down, but as soon as you get any shifting or anything like that, they twist and they pop. And when you're putting them in, the amount of torque that you put onto it, it twists it and they can fail. The piles that I put in are 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch wall, hardened steel. These things, you can't twist them. I'll break my machine or the Mini X that I'm driving before I break one of my screws.
Wow, that is amazing. That is awesome. Wow. Man, you're teaching me a lot more about piles than I ever even thought about it. That is just crazy and mind-blowing to me. When I think about the piles versus, other things that came in as well with, what is it called?
Diamond?
Diamond, yes. I mean, I like diamond. I like diamond when I didn't know about pile.
Right. I've actually installed a lot of them. Yeah. I installed a bunch, one of my former companies. I installed them because there was the newest thing and it was like, oh my gosh. Well, now there's about 50% of the soils in Minnesota where they're not good enough. Yeah. If you've got, where my parents are on the east side of St. Paul, Maplewood area.
I was just about to say, like Woodbury, good portions of, I want to say Cottage Grove are not accepting them.
No, they're not, unless you do a soil test. Well, soil tests cost a whole bunch of money. So I can come in, no soil test with a helical pile and make sure that I put it in. I can tell you exactly how strong that pile is, what pile that can take. And if I come in and I put one in and I'm like, I'm not hitting what I need, I can go get a bigger pile. Right. So I use a company called Viking Helical Piles. They're right here in Minnesota. That's my supplier of piles. You have to be a certified helical pile installer and an insured company to be able to even buy them. Right. And the ones that I can get them up to where the tube is 5 inches in diameter and the blades go out to 24 inches. So I can put massive ground with my machine. So as far as anything that you and me do in residential, I have no problem with anything that, like I could put, most bridges wouldn't need as much strength as what we put in.
What you would be able to do with that?
So like I built a 40-foot wooden bridge in Delwood, Minnesota.
Delwood, out of all places.
I built a massive 40-foot wooden bridge with, my old boss, Don, was a genius. He could create anything. He gave me a drawing, he said, here, build this. And we did. And it was a blast to build. It was one of the neatest experiences of my life, and I get to drive by it every day. Like anytime I go out to my friend's house in Mahtomedi and look at it, and holy crap, I built that bridge.
I got so many questions about that bridge.
Okay, go ahead.
So what did you guys use, like a barge or something? Or
No, so it was 40 feet long, and what we did is we made a jig to build the entire beam from scratch. So we made it with pressure treated lumber and we epoxied it all together, no metal fasteners. And then we flipped them on our side, took a huge sander, sanded it all flat, flipped it over, did the other side, made the other one just like it.
Okay.
And then huge pile of concrete on this side, huge pile of concrete on this side, set the whole thing in there and built it all in place. So I've got cool pictures. I'll show you.
Wow, I got to see that. Yeah. That is insane. I mean, but what a cool concept to like really kind of take the big ass camcorders, that poor people.
Dude, the ones that we had with a VHS in it.
Oh, I know.
Like a bazooka.
It's like, please don't shoot me. Yeah. Just imagine showing that to our kids right now. They're like, what in the heck is this?
Oh, yeah. It's bigger than some of the... I have an iPad that has a better camera and can do a million other things. It's my phone.
The camcorders. I
know.
My
phone is better.
I know. It's so crazy. I like how people get frustrated right now. We'll get back to it, just a little off side note on this. Like, my fucking phone doesn't work or blah, 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 blah. I'm like, your phone doesn't work. Okay, hold on. That's not a phone, first of all. That's a camera. That's a recorder. It's a phone.
It's everything
a fax.
that you need.
It's a computer. It's an email.
It's a video game.
It's a video game.
Oh, yeah.
You got Google in your pocket to do any kind of research. You got to market, buy a car, buy food, deliver whatever, need Taco Bell, need coffee. I mean, you're complaining.
I call it the magic talkie box in my pocket.
It is.
Because, seriously, if you talked to somebody 100 years ago and they asked you a question, you go, let me Google that.
Bro, you don't have to go 100 years ago. You can go back to when me and you were growing up and we didn't have that. And it's like, you had a question,
I got out my parents' dictionary or the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Right.
We had 50 of them. It's like,
how else are you supposed to find out?
Ask an old person.
Now the crazy part is you don't even have to do the research.
No.
Like go through each and every pages and find out.
Right.
Just ask AI.
Ask AI all of
And
it.
just gives you the general knowledge of whatever you're looking for.
Right.
Literally. I was, between us, there's a certain individual who's going to be unnamed. It's part of his existence. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. You're going to get an answer. You know, if you ask question, ask Jeeves. We're going to say that for that. Remember that used to be
Oh yeah, I remember it.
Ask Jeeves was competing with Google in the beginning of time. That's way before your time.
You're like
used
12,
to be a
right?
search engine.
Ask Jeeves.
Jeeves, like Jeeves, I believe, or something like that.
So there was a bunch of those.
I knew there was ask.com.
Well, there was Ask.com. There were so many search engines when in the beginning of all of this, and even we didn't know what the heck. When you use a search engine in the beginning, everybody was talking about Google, and it's like, well, what is Google? What does Google do? You know, well, you go in there and you ask a question. It's like, haha, well, you know, what question do you ask? You know, whatever. But Google, whatever it is today, you know. Right. But it was this individual will give you an answer, and it doesn't matter, you know. It's in a realm of believability. So, anywho, getting back to construction.
Okay. I've gone down like 3 different rabbit holes. I'm sorry.
I know, that's okay. So did I. We both just did. What was the? I would say, what was the most challenging job that you did with your helical piles, and what was the funnest job that you did, and maybe even what's the biggest?
So the very first job that I started telling you the story about my buddy Skip. He was going to get a dock put in. This guy came in and said, "It's going to be about $165,000," and I was like, "Well, I want $165,000. I wonder how he's going to do that." And he wouldn't tell anybody. Well, he had a website, and it was. I shall remain nameless. He is still in operation, and he does boardwalks and docks. And I thought, what a cool thing. And I started watching his videos, and he's putting screws in. I'm like, I've seen that before, but only in this one situation in commercial where they were putting them in sideways for underpinning. So I told my friend Skip, I said, I think I can do this for a lot less, and I think I can do it. And he goes, how do you know? I said, well, I can do anything. It just takes money, as I've said. So that winter, I started cold calling helical pile companies around the United States, mostly on the East Coast. Helical piles were created on the East Coast in America by a blind Irish engineer working with the Army Corps of Engineers in the 1830s. He created these things. So originally, they were oil-soaked logs with a massive cast iron screw head on the bottom of it, and he would put these in with a team of draft horses walking around it. And they would screw into the ground. And he did it because they were putting lighthouses on the East Coast. Well, if you've ever been to the East Coast, everything is muck. Everything. Every house there is built on everything. Sometimes 150 feet, there was nothing. Well, the United States wanted these lighthouses all down the whole East Coast. So the Army Corps of Engineers met this Irish guy who created these things. And he put them in, and some of those lighthouses are still in use today because he built these things so well.
Wow.
Yeah, so that
is just mind-blowing right now to me.
Yeah, so that's the history. In the 1830s, these things were put in. So, I mean, like, that's like 5 people ago.
I know.
So,
I love how you're like, that's 5 people ago.
Yeah, well, it's like, if people,
like,
live to
grandpa,
60 to
grandpa,
80.
great-grandpa.
Exactly. It's not that many people ago.
I ran out of people at 3.
Yeah. So he figured out how to do this. Well, I watched this guy put these piles in on a video. I started cold calling companies. I found a company in upstate New York. It was a family-owned business. They're the biggest family-owned business. And I called them and I said, this is what I want to do. And there was just silence on the other end of the line. And this guy goes, so you called me out of the blue to figure out how to do this? And I said, yep. He goes, have you ever installed a pile before? I said, well, no. He's like,
I'm about to.
How do you know you can do this? It goes back to it. I can do anything. It just takes money. And he just laughed his butt off, thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. And he said, all right, you're in our class. So I spent 3 months in their classes learning all of the math behind it, why they work, how they work. I got the entire...
Obviously to explain to like a lot of building officials, because they don't have a clue. Yeah. Some of them maybe...
I've had some really interesting conversations with building officials that, because when I started using them, 7 years ago, people are like, excuse me, what is this? In Minnesota, it was never used unless it was in commercial. Very rarely anyways. You wouldn't put them in for decks. You wouldn't put them in for docks. It was not cost effective. So for that project, I called my dear friend and I said, I got approved to install piles. I've got all the prices. I had 2 semi-truck loads of lumber dropped off at the house. I built the entire project. I did it for way less than half of what that guy was gonna charge. And he's one of my best friends. I still get to go out there and hang out on that dock. What's really cool is going to Google Earth and showing people the dock. It's 265 feet long, 8 foot wide, and I could drive my F-350 out to the end of it right now.
Wow, that is crazy.
That is one of the coolest projects I've ever worked on.
That is amazing. And that to be your first project?
That was the very first time that I ever installed a helical pile.
So how did you install the helical piles on that? Did you just kind of install a few and then drive on? And
So I put 2 in, I put a header across it. I reached out 10 feet, put 2 in, put a header across it. And I had 10 foot by 8 foot wide deck pieces that I set on top of it. This is the deck that was going to be there. They were already built. I drove my machine up onto it and I just kept going. And apparently the engineering wasn't behind what I was doing. I was driving my machine that was a Bobcat E42, which with my drill on the end of it and picking up a dock section was somewhere in the area of 10 tons. And I was driving on top of 4x6s with 2x6s. And there's no reason it should have worked, but it did. And now I know better. I would never build it that way. I can build it with a way smaller machine, way better building materials, all that kind of stuff. Right. But that is probably it's in the top 10 of coolest things I've ever built.
It is a learning curve.
Yeah, well, yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. And we're going to be doing a drone, a video, everything about that dock. Okay. It was put in 7 years ago. It goes 60 feet out into the lake over water, and it has been there for 7 years, and the ice hasn't touched it. It's such a cool product.
Dude, share some of that information so we can just
sure.
plug it into this and show it of what it is.
Heck yeah.
And then you can use it too.
So when I was building that bridge, we did it with concrete. We put these massive concrete forms and built it. It was 5 yards of concrete and 5 yards of concrete. It was a pain in the butt to do it all. We got it all done, but if I was a helical pile installer then, it was 2 piles on that side, 2 piles on that side, and I just set it on top and be done.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have to.
Literally.
Yeah.
So tell me, what's the biggest helical pile you installed? Or like what's the widest and the heaviest, or the most to accept the
So the piles that I was putting in for the dock were, I think the deepest one I went was like 21 or 24 feet. I was cutting them off to the exact height, but I was going through a lake and into the lake bed. Once my digital readout told me I had proper soils, I just stopped, took it off, took a portable bandsaw and cut it off at the height that I wanted it. So I didn't have to bolt them down. It was massive amounts of weight on it. It's never gonna move. So I did it that way for that. And so those were double helices. So there's a small blade and then a bigger blade and then a bigger blade on top. So you can do triples, and then you can get, when your extensions go on, those have blades on it to step out. So when you're putting massive amounts of weight, like the piles that I put in for you, they're I put them in for anybody. It's a 7 foot pile with a single helice at the bottom. That's the part that looks like a screw. That's the part that draws it into the ground and holds it there. Those ones can hold right around 13,000 pounds, ultimate load. The ones that I was putting in for that could hold more like 26 to 30,000 pounds on one.
Wow, that is insane.
Yeah, so a little over engineering on that, but yeah, especially for how weak the things that I was putting on top and I was driving that massive machine on top of. But for anything that we're doing, we don't really need anything else, especially if you're, like if I was building a 2-story addition, I'd obviously get the engineering done for it. The company that I get my helical piles from will do the engineering for me. So I tell them I have to put 2 stories this big, 50,000 pounds. They're like, no problem. So
that is awesome. Yeah. I mean, to them it's easy, and to them it's like, rather use our systems. Right. And we'll do that for you as a 1+, just to use it. That's crazy. I did not know that though. Knowing now that, like, if we're doing the additions when we're not really necessarily in a need of, footings and regular foundation, you're like, Aaron, Because I didn't even think about it.
Like I just watched a house in Shoreview get built. It's right on a lake, and the house is on slab, and the footing all the way around. They dug down this far, put in helical piles every 2 feet all the way around it, poured their concrete, and built the house. Wow. So Lake Minnetonka, they make people, if you're within 3 feet of the height of the lake, you have to use helical piles now. There's like 2 guys that are the only ones that are allowed to put helical piles in anywhere over there. Otherwise, I'd have had 2 docks out there already. So.
Really? So they got like, what, is it some...
You ever built on Minnetonka?
No, we did a lot of remodeling, but I never built anything.
So in order to build anything anywhere near the water there, you have to get approval from all 7 cities that
are part of it?
That are part of the
almost like a watershed district type of thing?
No, it's the cities that touch it, that border it, have its own like cabal that like is in charge of all building anywhere near the water.
Okay.
So I had a guy call me from the big island of Minnetonka and say, I want a permanent dock. So I go out, he's got a $3 million home on the big island. You can't drive to it, you drive out to it. He picked me up in his boat, brought me out there, I figured it all out. I got approval from all the cities, but then there's like an HOA for the island that wouldn't allow it for some reason. I don't understand how the whole thing worked out, but it didn't get approved. It would have been a cool one because I would have had to barge everything out there and then build everything. Like I'd have to have a boat driving me back and forth, me and my guys, every day for working.
Funny you should say that because one of my buddies just worked with a company there that is, I think, like one of 2 that puts in docks in and out, you know, for the closing out of the season and
that install and take out, install in the spring, take them out in the fall.
Yeah. And he was driving this big barge and you know doing all that. Yeah. Which I was just like,
there's like 3 barge companies out there, and they're massive barges.
Oh yeah.
I could drive a full size excavator.
Easy.
Like 20 ton, drive it onto this thing, drive it out there. I thought that was really sweet. So I was like, how?
And it's like we're on water.
Yeah.
You know, keep that in mind.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I don't like ice fishing, let alone freaking being in a barge. Man.
Ice fishing is
man.
Awesome.
Well, it is. I'm not, you know, how do I say, I'm Minnesotan enough, but not Minnesotan enough to drive on ice and or go fish on ice.
You just got to take a snowmobile out there.
You know I don't have a snowmobile. I'm not that advanced in the snow activities for our lovely state. I'm here.
I am.
Yeah, I know you. God knows you are.
I love Minnesota.
I love how I feel like you would literally walk out in your tank top even in the middle of a winter. Like you walk out in a tank top
and I walk out.
I know. And I walk out in the shorts and the neighbors just look at us. Literally, my wife yells at me to put on pants while I'm shoveling. And I'm like, I'm not cold.
No.
And she's like, yeah, but you look like a moron, and all of our neighbors are going to think you're crazy. One day, it was beautiful sunny day. I just got up. I had my shorts on. I was like, I'm just going to put a jacket on and go shovel. And I did that. And Dan, you know, across the street, he comes up and he's like, I don't know what the heck you're made of. I was like, why? He's like, how are you not cold? And then he goes like, excuse me, Jesus, you're not freezing.
I love, I've had neighbors take videos of me out. I'm snow blowing my massive driveway in shorts. I've got my boots on.
Boots on, yeah.
But shorts and a light jacket or a hoodie and out snow blowing, happy as a clam. Yeah. We're thicker folk than most.
I guess that's what it is. I like how you said thicker.
Well, look.
That's why we survive.
When the hard winter shows up, we're fine.
Oh my God, I know. And my lovely best friend, who should remain nameless, and it rhymes with NS, October comes and he puts on his freaking 3 pairs of long johns. And then I'm like, what is up with you? I would die in that. He's like, dude, I am freezing.
Only time you put on long johns is if you're going to sit in a tree stand for deer hunting. That's it.
I had a pair, and then I realized that I'm like...
Then you have to wear them if you own them.
But I was like, what? Why do I even own them? I'm like, I never put them on. And there was few jobs that, as you know, we kind of partially messed around a little bit in the ice dam and ice dam removal and all of that. And I'll put them on for that, and then it's like I get irritated because once you get out there, they're good, but then I feel like once you get out there and you get hot, and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm starting to like just shed clothes everywhere. I'm like, I'm not liking this at all. Yeah, I know, I agree. Thank you. At least somebody who agrees.
Like if I'm going and sitting somewhere and I'm going to be cold, like if I'm ice fishing, I'm sitting on a 5-gallon bucket in the middle of a lake. Sure, I'll put them on.
Yeah. Because it's like you're not exerting any energy to create heat and you're good to go. But otherwise, God, I get this panic attack. I swear to you, I literally get a panic attack of like how hot it is.
Too compressed.
Yeah. It's like I feel like I'm gonna choke and die. Literally, that's what it is for me. Oh my God. Anything else you would like to discuss when it comes to?
As we dither on about cold weather.
I know. Either construction or piles or anything that we haven't touched upon.
Boy, I don't know.
And not to put a light on you. Raju, do you have any question as somebody who doesn't understand helical piles and what they're all about? How many questions you got?
But I don't know which could be more relevant.
Well, let's start off.
I've got the whole afternoon. Go ahead.
Let's start off with few and see where we get.
It is an alternative to concrete in certain aspects. Can helical piles be used as a, what did you call it? As an alternative. Okay.
Concrete, yep.
All right. Can helical piles be used as an alternative to concrete? In certain situations, yes. Instead of a footing for a deck or a building that you're putting on your building, or basically any time that you're going to put a post down on the ground, you can use a helical pile. If you're building walls, there are ways to get around. Like if I put 4 of them in a row and I put big brackets on them and I put a big board across it, and I can build a wall on top of that. But in most cases, concrete still can be put down on top of helical piles for the exterior walls of a house or even the interior ones. For lifting old houses that have cracked, their foundations have fallen. It's called underpinning. So I actually just got to do that recently for a 100-and-some-year-old cabin in Maplewood. We went in, put in screws all the way around the whole outside of the house with these massive L brackets and pulled the whole house up. Wow. And then those brackets just are screwed to the house, and that's the new foundation of a really old building. I've got pictures of that too. So
that is awesome. That is really awesome. I didn't even think of that application. It makes perfect sense for that application now when you mentioned it, but I never even thought it never crossed my mind that would be something that would be good to use.
So in Minnesota, we have extreme temperatures. Mm-hmm. Some of the most extreme in the world as to where people live. Yes. So I have gone to school when it was -65. I have gone to school when it was 115.
Where else in one place on the planet can you get those, exactly, opposites?
Sure, and with those opposites, you have massive freezing, massive heat, and the moisture content of concrete. If it was just poured, or over time, concrete will start to fall apart. Yeah. Half-life of concrete is 100 years. Yeah. Half-life of a helical pile is like hundreds. So like concrete gets hardest at 100 years. Yep. And then it starts falling apart, and then you have the lime and the concrete dust and all of the stone, and most of the time a bunch of steel, yep, in that concrete, in rebar and tie wires. That will fall apart, go in, and it'll ruin your soils. Yep. A hot dip galvanized helical pile go in the ground, and my children's children could come in and unscrew that in 200 years, and there's no off gas.
Great Grandpa Aaron put this in, and we pulled this out.
Exactly. Yep. So it's environmentally friendly. Yep. It's the best use of what you can do for a deep foundation.
And that's such a cool thing too, that I like that concept that we're starting to think for the life expectancy, life use and of certain products, mm-hmm, and trying to figure out something that, I feel like, before it was just get it up, get it going. I don't care what environmental impact of it is or any other impact outside of what we're trying to do. With this right now, it's like, hey, let's maybe put some thought into it, for God's sakes, and to see, like, can we make it better? Can we make it last longer? And can we make it last to, it's whatever its potential is.
Yeah, something that kind of, like, I work on houses a lot that are made in the 40s and the 50s. I've worked on houses built, I think the oldest one was 18 something. up in Cloquet, Minnesota. I worked on the original farmhouse in the entire area of Cloquet. Wow. Really cool house. Right. Could have used some helical piles, but it was built on a wood foundation, and those things fall apart. Right. So I love the idea that I'm building something that my kids' kids could look at. Because like if you think about construction, we build things and they have maybe a 100-year life expectancy, maybe. Where there are buildings right now in the world that are thousands of years old that are stone that someone put their heart and soul into, and they left a legacy. Well, I kind of want to leave a legacy of building things that will last. And those helical piles are just like when you're building on a foundation that is so strong, everything above it is, square and straight.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, I never thought about like what my legacy of building things is going to be, and that it's going to, like, it never made me think about it in any way, shape, or form where, like, I wanted something to be left behind me, per se, that says, hey, kids, grandpa built this, like we just mentioned, But what it did for me, which was really weird, on my recent vacation, we are getting into Louvre and we're walking towards the front entrance. And as we walk in, the guy's like, I just want to show you something that, a lot of people don't know what it is and don't see it and don't, even acknowledge it or pay attention to it, as we're walking towards it. I'm like, okay. I didn't even have a clue of, where he was going to this. But as I see one wall, as we're walking in, I see one wall that's, all modern and all covered up in, drywall, plaster, whatever the case might be. And the other, there's just all of these bricks that are exposed, And as we're walking in, I'm like, why does this look familiar to me? I mean, it shouldn't look familiar to me. I have no connection. But like where we're sitting in, I'm like, oh my God, it's that, what is it called? Moat? Is it moat that you fill up with water?
Moat?
Yeah. For like when somebody's attacking a castle. Yeah. I was like, we're in a moat. And he's like, yes. He's like, you're the first one that figured it out. I said, well, it wasn't that I figured it out for that reason, but the walls, the way that they're scaling up, and looking to the other side, I'm like, they would obviously use it, knowing where we're going, stepping into. And he goes like, what I want you to pay attention to, actually, amazing on that, but he's like, these stones have sat here for hundreds of years. And look at them closely, you're gonna see personal, like, logo of the stone people that were working on this and the masons that were working on this, that were putting this together. Some of them had hearts, some of them had X's, some of them had certain other things. And as you go through them, each stone that was like cut to that preciseness, each mason put his mark on it to show, that. That made me start thinking about it.
You never thought about that before?
I never thought that I wanted any of my, I don't know, that I cared enough that I build something that's after me, stays after me before I, like it didn't, I don't think it was ever important enough to me, or that even came across that my mission was for something like that, right? But seeing that and putting those two together, I was like, huh. I want to start doing something like that.
The first job that I ever worked on as a carpenter, at the time I was an apprentice. I had just gotten into the construction industry, and I was building a recording studio. So got into building rooms within rooms. None of the walls are square to each other. So these walls are tipped. These walls are tipped. The ceiling on top of it is tipped, and then the room that you build inside of it is not touching the exterior room, and those walls are tipped opposite, and those walls are tipped opposite, and you're building this in order to deconstruct sound waves. And so that's how I got into construction, is I built this thing. Wow. It was built in the 3rd floor of the Union Depot building in downtown St. Paul. Get out of here. The whole 3rd floor. So I was there.
I wish I knew that, like last year when we were there.
It's all gone now. The entire recording studio, I spent 3.5 years of my life there. When I started there, I was an apprentice. When I left, I was a journeyman. Wow. I did steel studs, sheetrock. We did hundreds and hundreds of sheets of sheetrock, where the first layer of sheetrock goes directly onto the metal studs. The second layer of sheetrock is turned the opposite direction, every single crack and crevice of this sheetrock, which is screwed directly to the sheetrock with jip-to-jip screws and sound caulking. None of that they weren't touching, so there was no sound transfer between. We did a lot of really interesting things. So when I think about construction, the thing that I built on the inside of that, the city of St. Paul actually tore it all out. That's all offices now for the light rail. The light rail stops right in front of it. They ripped all of it out. It took, my boss went up there and was looking at it while they were tearing it apart. So that was 2001 when I helped start that. And now it's just gone. In 2023, everything that I did, all that hard work, the hours and hours, the blood, I bled everywhere in that place. Like I bleed a lot. I'm really good at bleeding. So
I'm a professional.
yeah, all I have to do is point at people. And
yeah. I can.
I've hurt myself in some very interesting ways. But the building that was there was already 100 years old, the Union Depot building. And it's all stone and steel.
Right.
And that thing will be there forever. It's being used as a train station again. Parts of the building that were not accessible were closed off with construction and locks and chains. You couldn't get those areas are all being used again, and they're just beautiful. And the construction guys who built that were gone 50 years before I was born. And those guys left a legacy. And now how can I build legacy? Well, I guess I'll start with the helical piles.
Yeah, that's a very good way to end it. You know what I mean? That where am I going to build it? Use that for an end. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I don't know why I never even thought in that, that far in future. I don't know why I never triggered anything. Nothing triggered it, I guess, until that one little stone in that moat with that heart on it.
Did you take a picture of it?
I do have it.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, and he was just a key part of everything that was, there, but he played that part, and he played that part very well, and that's the part where it's like, okay, and I guess also, at a certain time, I don't know, maybe at a certain age, it hits you that like the legacy part should be something that, I leave behind in whatever I do. And not that I did it poorly, that I didn't care for it, but it was never never part of my thought.
I never want to be so enveloped by the business mind that I'm not thinking about what I'm leaving behind. You know what I mean? Because as business people, the numbers, it's all about the numbers. It's all about the people that we're working for right now. It's all about the relationships that I've gathered, my friends, my family. It's all those things. But what kind of legacy am I leaving behind in the things that I do in the day-to-day? So there are two places in the world where I've ever had those moments. Well, three now, but I helped start a church a long time ago. Our second campus is in downtown Minneapolis, and the building is called Historic Wesley. And if you've ever been to the Minneapolis, what do you do? It's where they have it's these huge domes. What the heck is that called? It's a massive building, and it's for trade shows, and it's for...
Oh my God,
yes, the convention center.
Yes.
So if you're looking at the convention center, at the front doors, and you look over here and you see there's a huge old church, that church is Substance. That's the church that I helped start. We own that building. So
how long ago?
We have owned that building now for 4 or 5 years.
Oh, okay, man.
So
when I was in high school, just a side note on that.
Sure.
Sorry, hold that thought. I did security for a little bit.
Okay. At the convention center?
No, for a certain company, and I was in that church a few times.
For weddings or for parties?
It was just literally, we would be hired to they help with homeless and they help with certain things, you can come and grab a meal, you can come and grab change, you can come and do a lot of things. However, you're not allowed to sleep in there.
Yep.
You would have to figure, somewhere else, or either join what they're trying to help you with to, go to other places and stuff like that. So I was there for those reasons. And I would just walk around that building admiring it.
The huge dome, the ceiling.
Yeah.
So I went into the upstairs of that thing. When we first bought the building, I was given kind of a key and said, go look.
Yeah.
That building goes down 4 stories under the city. Like, it's pretty amazing.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, like
Even
the
though
catacomb,
security there.
it's connected to the catacombs of Minneapolis. It's pretty amazing. But then you go into the upstairs of that building, and that top of that dome, so that entire building is made with 8 pieces of steel, stone, and wood.
8 pieces of steel.
8 pieces of steel. There's a superstructure there's 4 pieces that go up, and then they are connected like that.
Yeah.
And that was the superstructure of the building, and everything was built around that. So that dome has 4 huge pillars and then a big box around it. And you go up there, and on top of it, the entire dome is done hand framed with 1x material.
Oh my God.
And there's thousands and thousands of pieces, and it's all done. Every single piece was cut with a guy with a saw, and
like
every
actual
single
saw.
with an actual hand saw.
Yeah.
And it was done with a guy with a hammer and a nail. So every single piece, he figured it out. He figured out the angle. He cut the angle perfectly. He put it in, and he put nails into it. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of these boards up there.
My God, that is just like, it gives me goosebumps.
As a carpenter, you walk into that, and I'm like, talk about legacy.
Yeah. But just like talk about the skill that isn't here anymore.
Oh yeah, there's nothing. We have nothing for.
Take the best carpenter. I don't know if we will be able to recreate.
Exactly. No, I am a very skilled carpenter. I'm a very skilled woodworker. I don't think that I could do.
Figure that out.
Here's the seats in that place. You know how the room is curved? They had shipbuilders come in and make all the seats.
Shipbuilders.
Shipbuilders, because they were curved. It was curved. They didn't want to have straight pews, so the pews are all curved. So they had shipbuilders come in, bend all the wood. They would steam all the wood, create it, and build these onto the pieces. So like, it's just amazing. And then, you know, it's part of the Historical Society. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke on that stage. Like, it's that was the largest building in Minnesota until the W was built across the street.
Wow.
And then all the buildings around it.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was built in 1893, I think, is when it was christened. Like, there's a big block, a cornerstone that says when it, but now that's Substance Church.
That is amazing. I did not know that.
You ever want to see something cool? I'll bring you into that place.
Oh, we're gonna go there.
Yeah,
I was just waiting for like.
Yeah.
Hey.
No, it's amazing. Like, when you look at things that are built now, yes, they're built strong. Yeah. Yes, they're built efficient. But are they built with 200 years from now in mind?
Yeah. That's the part that I'm almost like as a general contractor, builder, you know, everything that we do, it makes me always think like everything that we do is so temporary, you know? And it's not, none of it is for the long-term vision, you know? Sure. If it does surpasses our lifetime, that's a plus, but I feel like nothing is put enough time onto it to last for whatever. It's meant to be such a transitional thing, you know? Where, especially the further you go out, you know what I mean? Minneapolis, for sure, you know, there's so many beautiful old, you know, buildings, St. Paul, same thing. But outside of that, there isn't much left, you know? And these boxes that you see, you know, from the national builders every which way, it's like, oh my God, come on, you know, really? I mean, not to knock that either, but demand, supply, everything else. But it has become such a sterile, no character, no thought into it whatsoever, like washed out version of 2023 home to 1923 home.
Oh yeah, when I was framing houses, stick framing for Tappy back in the day, it was a new 4,000 square foot house every 10 days.
Yeah, wow.
Just
Yeah.
go across the street, do it again, do it again. Take the same plan, flip it over. Now flip it over this way. Now flip it over this way. Now start over at the first one.
Yes.
And every single one is exactly the same. And sure, that makes a beautiful home, but for how long?
Yeah. For how long, and what is there that is going to, you know, like we just talked about a little bit ago, that our great-grandchildren are going to be like, oh yeah, well, my grandpa.
When our daughters have kids.
Yeah. My grandpa built that. I don't even want to think about that.
No, I don't either.